Hello, I'm going to show you how to create a Docker image and how to basically also run that image in a Docker container, right? So there are some prerequisites for this. I'm going to make sure that you have their prerequisites. One of the prerequisites is to have WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux, version 2 installed. So the best way to validate that you have that is just if you type in WSL and actually, as a matter of fact, WSL-L-V, not on that. So let's delete this real quick. Open new terminal and then just say WSL-L-V. So it says that I have version 2 running here. So Docker Desktop is a software that I installed. Before you install Docker Desktop, make sure you're installing WSL. WSL here stands for Windows Subsystem for Linux. That is essential. It's a backbone for running lightweight Linux containers that are essential for running the Docker Desktop, which in turn helps you run the containers, right? So this recording is mainly about host an API within a Docker container. It's very simple, and it's a bunch of setup. But please make sure that you are up to this point. I'm going to show some links. I'm going to put some links in the description that you can use to follow the steps to install WSL2 and also Docker Desktop. So that said, since I have WSL already installed here, let's create an API, a simple boilerplate API. So I'm just going to use the template .NET new API, right? So that creates a simple API weather forecast, right? And the API is up and running. We can issue .NET run. So there we go. If we go over, if you go to API, oops, sorry, I think it's weather forecast, you get the data coming from the API endpoint. So the next step is how to create an image with that, right? We're able to run the API by hitting the Kestrel server. Now we want to host it within a container. So for that, we need to, first step we need to do is we need to publish our app, right? So right now, if I go into our app, if I go into the File Explorer, I'll bring the File Explorer in the bin, in the debug, there is no release folder here. And there is no publish folder either, so because we never published it. So let's go ahead and first publish it. So .NET publish with the configuration of release, right? So when you do this, what it's doing is it's creating the publish folder for us with all the artifacts needed. So go ahead and go to the File Explorer. Now go to bin, release, .NET 5, publish folder. Now it has all the things we have necessary that we can start exporting these contents into the container app folder. So before we do that, the first step we need to do is create a Dockerfile, right? So I'm going to go to the root of the project, which has a CSproj in it. Go ahead and create a new file, right? Call it Dockerfile, whatever, right? Don't put any extension in. That's fine. Hit save yes and right click and open this. Open this with Visual Studio Code. So it opens the file here, and it puts some commands in here that I'm going to, I have it ready. So here, there are 4 lines here. The first one is basically saying, hey, this when you run this Docker file, it runs each line. The first line tells that, hey, pull the base image from Microsoft.com, which contains the .NET Runtime 5.0, because you need this, because image is a self-contained thing. It needs to have all the framework files and the application files. And this first line is pulling the framework files. In this case, we want ASP.NET 5.0. Version is also important. Make sure it matches the version of the project you're running in. To double check that, go to your CSproj file. You have .NET 5.0 here, so that's exactly what you need. That needs to match this. And next, once you remember, we just published the files in the publish folder, so copy the files in the publish folder to the app folder that is inside the container, and that's where the second line is. And the third line is set the current working directory to the app folder once the copy is successful. And the third one is when you run the container, run this command .net, and this becomes the entry point into the container. Here, the project name, we need to replace this with whatever your project name is. In our case, it's the CS ProjFile demo_container is the name of that. So go ahead and use the same name, demo_container. Save that. So once you have the Docker file added, the next step is you need to create a Docker image. So to create an image, we have a command called Docker build. So go ahead and I'm going to copy that and paste it here. So we have Docker build, and this is a repository pointing to the image, or you can just call it just directly the image name. So replace this content with whatever image name that you want to call. So I think I'm going to call this as image-demo. I like to use dashes in between. So also a point here is look at the period. There's a space in front of the period. This is important. This is not by accident. This is how the Docker build command accepts it. So hit enter, and this should build your image. So it's done. So now if you want to look at all the images if it's successful or not, just run Docker images. So that'll show you all the different images. So this is the one I think we just created, although it says about an hour ago. I'm curious why it's saying an hour ago. What if we create something? I hope it's not conflicting with something I already have. What if I change the name to something else? So I'm going to call it weather image, right? So I hit this, it creates another image. Now, if I go into Docker images, weather image, it still says about an hour ago. I have no clue why it's saying about an hour ago, but you can use either this or this because they're essentially the same. So once you have the image, we need to run the container with this image, right? So first, let's take a look at if there are any containers on the system, right? So for that, I'm going to clear this and then say Docker ps-a. That shows you all the containers running, right? So we have two containers. This container ID is running this image, another container running a separate image. So I'm going to create a new container. So you can use Docker create and Docker start. It's a two-step process to create a container and start the container. And also, in addition to two, as opposed to two commands, you can also run a single command, Docker run, that essentially it creates the container and starts the container for you. I would prefer that approach. So in this case, I'm going to use that approach. Again, so that's not. So I'm going to use Docker run. Docker run is the command that combines creating and starting, right? And -- remove any existing containers with the same name. Run on the port 8001, let's say, and then map it to the port 80 on the container, and name the container as I don't know, container weather, and then also point the container to the image. I think we call the image image-demo. Not entirely sure what the name of it. Okay, it started. So basically now it started the container for us. The best way to check this is click this, open that, and replace this with localhost. Make sure you put HTTP. It's going to go to Google. 80,001, right? And that points to the 80 on the container. /weather forecast. There you go. Now you got the API response. So Basically what we did is we are now running the API within the container, right? Because 8001 is the port connecting to the container. It's mapping to port 80, and you got the same output as before. And this is how you would simply deploy your application to run within a Docker container. In the next video, I'm going to show you how to put this on a Kubernetes on localhost. Thank you.